Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, in this episode we're going to do some daylight HDR by hand with no tripod. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, my name is Serge Ramelli. I'm a French photographer living in Paris, and right now I'm traveling. I'm in Florida, and this is Tarpon Spring, a beautiful city of Florida. And welcome to episode 104. In last episode I showed you how I shot some buildings in San Francisco and how to make them really straight. That's the final result. I want to announce that I have a new course that is coming out today. It's called Photoshop for Photographer. It's over 5 hours course, and it's really all I know about Photoshop and how you can use it as a photographer. At the end of this video, I will show you a full presentation of this new course. Now, right now, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to do a daylight HDR. I'm going to show you how we set the camera, and then we're going to take the photo. So let me show you how I set up the camera. Okay, so first thing, make sure the quality is in RAW. And then you go to the second tab, and you have what we call the exposure compensation, automatic exposure bracketing, AEB. You click on it with that's by the way a Canon 70. I forgot to mention that. So it's Canon, and here you can choose the different exposures you want. What I usually go is for -3, 0, +3. These are good values during the day that I find that really works for me. So I click on OK. And the last thing, which is very important, is I have to put it on timer. So I go here and I make sure that I'm on a 2-second timer. So what's going to happen is when I'm going to press enter, it's going to wait 2 seconds and it's going to take 3 shots. So 1, 2, 3. And the 70 is a very fast camera. I think it's a 7 photo per second camera. So it's perfect. So the other thing you need to make sure is that you have enough light, and you have to make sure that your setting, I'm here at 7.1, and my speed is at 320. You need to be above 200 to make sure that your overexposed photo is not going to be too slow for shutter speed, so that you don't have a blurry shot. So take an aperture which is big enough so that your photo is is pretty neat, is pretty sharp. So 7.1, that's pretty good. That's a big depth of field. And make sure your speed is over 200. So right now I'm in manual mode, and I've entered 7.1 and 320, because with the light that I have, I know I can have all 3 photos. So now let's go and take the photo. So to shoot this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be here so that I have 2 sides of the church. It's to give more depth to a photo. It's interesting that not to be completely parallel to the front face of the church, but to be 3/4, so you can have both sides. It just gives more dimension. Okay, so now I'm going to move around, and I have a 10-20 lens on a very, very wild, so I'm pretty wide in here. And now I'm going to press, and it's going to take 3 photos. 1, 2, 3. Of course, there was a car just now, so we're going to redo it. Okay, so I'm still at 7.1, 320 in terms of speed. And I press, it's going to take 1, 2, 3. And it is so fast. It is so fast that all 3 photos will be sharp. So that's it. That's all there is to it. You have to find a good subject. This one is good for HDR because it's very grungy church, and and there's really a nice sky. All right. So this is the final shot that I selected based on what I showed you. So as you can see, the first photo is 323 of a second, so it's very fast at 7.1 ISO 100. Let me take this out. The second one, which is the darkest one, is at 1,250 of a second. So, much faster shutter speed, less light coming in. And the third one, which is the longer exposure, is at 1/80 of a second. And you see, that's the importance of why the first photo must be above 200, is that for the last photo not to be below 1/50 of a second. Otherwise, you're going to have a blurry shot. And if one of your shot is blurry, it's not going to work when you're going to HDR it. So, before we HDR it, I just want to do basically just 2 things, a couple of things. First, I'm going to put daylight as the, as the white balance, and I'm going to lower a bit the exposure, just a tiny bit, and lower a bit the highlights, because if my normal photo is a bit overexposed, that means that I should have been a little bit faster on the speed, a bit darker. So that's fine, but you know, we can correct that. And I'm just making it a bit darker and a bit more highlights on this. And then I'm going to select, oh no, one more thing, really important, is I'm going to go and enable profiles correction, remove chromatic aberration, and I'm going to go to, oh, I'm sorry, here in upright, I'm going to click on auto. Check this out. And it's going to correct all the perspective. That's really cool. Then I'm going to select all three, click on sync, make sure check all is on, and synchronize. So I'm basically correcting just a little bit of exposure and you know, and just the upright function so that it looks straight. Then I'm going to right click, export to Photomatix Pro. We're going to be using the new version of Photomatix Pro, the version 5 that just came out. So I'm going to call this Church HDR. Okay. I like to, you know, put a custom file name here. You can choose a combination automatically. I like to put my own name so I can find the file back if something goes wrong. Make sure that align image is on, crop align result, output format 16, stacked with selected photo. That's pretty cool. Okay, export. And that's going to launch Photomatix Pro. So I'm going to put on pause until it's ready. So as I said, this is the new version of Photomatix. It's now version 5. You have a little, you know, main new features. They seem to have a lot of new features, which are really cool. But for this tutorial, we're not going to look into the new feature. I'm just going to use the standard thing. So I'm going to click on OK. And you see by default in Photomatix, you have the, well, that's the default option here. You have some preset default balance, which is a new algorithm that they have. That's one of, they call that the contract optimizer. It's a method here. There used to be tone compressor and detail enhancer, and now they added contrast optimizer. But on this one, because it's a very grungy looking church, I'm going to do the HDR look that some people really hate, which is the very illustrative look. So I'm going to go to detail enhancer, but let me show you then you have photographics, which is tone compressor. Photographics is pretty realistic looking. Natural, Penterly 2, Penterly 3. Okay, now I'm going to go on default, detail enhancer. What I usually do, I don't do much in Photomatix. I boost the strengths. And what I like to do is a detail contrast. On this one, I really want it to be high, so it's got a lot of detail contrast. Usually, when you do that, it makes the whole photo darker. In this case, you can just, you know, change you can adjust it. Then I'm going to go to lighting effects. I'm just gonna, what I like on lighting effects, when you click here, you got medium, surreal plus, natural. I usually go for natural or natural plus. I think natural plus is kind of fine on this one. Maybe boost a bit like this. And then I'm just gonna use the gamma. The gamma is basically the overall exposure, the mid-tones exposure. I'm just gonna lower a little bit the gamma because, yeah, to get more contrast on it. So I'm going for a grungy look. So yeah, that's about it. That's really what I do usually when I go for Photomatix. I want that Photomatix look, you know. If I want to do something natural, I usually use other techniques like digital blending. So I'm going to save it and re-import. And here we are back in Lightroom. It's re-imported. Usually what I would do a little bit of a double processing, meaning I would just, you know, maybe open up the shadows, and on this one, you know, bring a bit of vibrance. And yeah, and that's the sort of the first version of the HDR kind of look, you know, of the grungy look, you know, how it's really pretty cool, how you know, how it gives this sort of drama, you know. I mean, you know, some people really like this kind of effect. Oh, one thing I'm going to do is I want to get rid of that, you know, for sale thing. So I'm going to use, and I've tried this before and it actually worked. I'm going to use the spot removal, and check this out. I'm just going to select this. Maybe I'm going to do it in 2 pass. Let's do 1 pass. Okay, come here. 1 pass. Just making it sort of right. Okay, and let's do a 2nd pass. And I'm going to drag this down. When you have like a lot of texture just close to it, it sort of works well, you know. Okay, and then the shadow, I'm gonna take out the shadow. Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's cool. Check this out. Before the spot removal, after the spot removal. You know, well, I could do a better job at that. I could go into Photoshop, but I just don't want to have attention on it. And honestly, I don't think anybody's gonna notice that. I'm just showing you, you know, how to get the look. Okay, so that's one version. And usually when I go for the HDR, I really go for the crazy video game type of look, you know. So I'm gonna right-click, create virtual copy, and my buddy Calvin was playing around with it, and I thought he did something really cool. So let me show you what he did. First, he went into the saturation slider, and he desaturated the greens and the aqua and the blues, just to, you know, take out all the cold colors of the photo. And then he just boosted a bit the orange and back down a bit the yellows, something like that. Because the yellow is, you know, there's a lot of yellow on the church, right? And then the thing is that this red, you know, this red way is really dragging attention. So we can use a graded filter, something like this, and we can add a sort of first we can make it darker, okay, and we can add an opposite color to it, you know, something like red or blue, just to neutralize a bit the reds. And maybe desaturate in the same time, you know. Desaturate. I think my green is too strong, so I'm just going to lower the saturation of my greens. It's just, you know, so that it drags less attention, you know, on the pass. We're really going for like a sort of video game, you know, cover, like very grungy, scary look, you know. Very much that way. Okay, and then add some overall clarity, even more clarity, you know, something like that. Maybe add a bit of magenta, no. Yeah, and I think I'm just gonna add some vignetting to it. And we get something really scary, you know, really scary. This part of the wall is a bit boring lighting, so we can use maybe, you know, a radial filter to make it a bit more interesting. I'm gonna boost slightly up the exposure, or make sure you invert the mask, feather it. You know, I just wanna add a bit of complex lighting to this part of the wall. Here, duplicate and drag this here. And you know, I'm just going for a crazy monster look type of thing, you know. Crazy, maybe boost a bit the exposure and boost a bit the contrast. So yeah, but the whole thing was done without a tripod, you know, crazy HDR. That's the sort of the natural HDR, which is totally not natural. And that's the complete video game crazy. But I think it's a cool effect, you know, and sometimes it works, and you might need this for some design or some graphic. You know, it's good to know how to do this type of photography. And it's all done in Lightroom and using Photomatix. Photomatix actually has a free version where you can try it, just puts a watermark on it, but at least you can give it a try if you want. You can find it at hdrsoft.com or .net. Just type Photomatix on Google and you'll find it right away. Okay, voila, a little cool trick on how to do HDR by hand. Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, I'm happy to announce that I have a new course coming up. It is called Photoshop for Photographer. It's my longest course so far, over 5 hours long, and the whole purpose is to really give you all the tools you need with Photoshop for retouching your photos from a photographer viewpoint. Photoshop is a huge software and there's a lot of things you can do with it. We're going to look at it from a photographer viewpoint. The first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to use Camera Raw and we're going to retouch several projects. You can see some of the before and afters here coming on screen. And I'm going to show you a simple example at first, and then we're going to go into more and more complex raw file editing until you really get the raw file looking like you want. Next, we're going to go into layer, mask, and blending modes. To do that, I'm going to show you how to replace some skies so you really master the different types of blending modes and the different types of masking options that we have and how the layers really work with Photoshop. That is very important for you to understand. Then we are going to do some digital blending. Now, digital blending is an amazing technique for when you shoot the sky and when you shoot your foreground, and to mix them up to get all the dynamic range and a very natural result. Then we're going to jump into HDR. And on HDR, we're going to check the different techniques available today. We're going to do HDR using Photoshop, and then we're going to do HDR using 32-bit files and tone mapping in Camera Raw, which is one of my preferred way today because it gives a lot more natural result. Then I'm going to show you how to make a very HDR illustrative look with one single file. Next, we're going to go into black and white. And I'm going to show you two techniques to do black and white. One completely in Camera Raw and the other one in Photoshop for very dramatic results. Then we're going to jump into removing elements, and I'll show you the different tools that Photoshop has to take out and remove unwanted elements in your photo. That happens a lot when we take photography. Next, we're going to jump into panoramas, and I'm going to show you my whole workflow on doing panoramas. Next, I'm going to show you all kinds of small special effects from simulating a very nice bokeh on a photo, from doing tilt shift photography, trying to mimic an 85mm 1.4 lens to have a very small depth of field, how to explode details in a photo, all kinds of small tricks I've gathered over the years to give your photo an extra look. And last, we're going to put everything into practice to create one composite using all the things we have learned so far, and that will be the final tutorial. So I hope you do check it out. It's really all I know that I've put into one big tutorial on Photoshop. Photoshop for photographer. I hope you do check it out. Alright guys, I hope you like that tutorial. It's a pretty simple technique, but when you got the right clouds and the right subject, it can make really interesting photography, and you should have this in your tool bag as a photographer. Thank you for being there, and I hope you subscribe to my channel, and I hope you check out my new Photoshop for photographer course. Thank you very much. Au revoir.